yesterday, after Dmitry Bivol had a dominant decision over Michael Ifart, I went ahead and reached out to Jose Benavidez Sr. because I had seen the Boxing Scene article. I had seen the Ring magazine, which said Benavidez was offered a fight with Opetaia by Turkey, and then was instead going to pursue a Canelo fight still, even though Canelo has already let it be known that fight's never going to happen. And I felt that, and immediately saw the narratives being said by media and people on social media, which is, Benavidez is a bullshit artist, and he's never winds up fighting the best fighter in each weight class, and this just shows he's ducking Jai Opetaia, right, and putting roadblocks in front of the fight. Now, I've agreed that he's never fought the best fighter in any given weight class, and I understand their argument that he's the common denominator here. At some point, it's not always somebody else's fault. I understand them saying that, but at the same time, it was Canelo who ducked Benavidez. And Bivol, the WBC was hasty to strip him last April. But ultimately, at the time, I remember, I was there, the narrative was he can't fight Benavidez because he's got to finish this trilogy with Artur Beterbiev. And actually what wound up happening is he took a year off, got back surgery, and wound up fighting Michael Ifart yesterday. So the trilogy I think is going to happen. We'll get to that in a minute. But ultimately, he got stripped and took a year off, and that's what happened. And then Benavidez moved up to cruiserweight and fought Zittel Ramirez. So I call Jose Benavidez, who tells me that he reached out and has proof that he'll probably show at a later time. It's on him to show it. I understand that. He texted Dana White, he texted Turki Al-Sheikh, and he texted Mick Francis, Jai Opetaia's manager, to make a fight shortly after the Zittel Ramirez fight to discuss a fight between Benavidez and Jai Opetaia. And he got no word back. He was either left on delivered or left on read. Then after I tweeted that I just got off the phone with Jose Benavidez Sr., who's here to share me his side of things, and I'm going to relay it. Then I got a call from some other people that are not from Team Benavidez, who are very close to the situation, who are well-versed in the boxing business, okay? And, I won't disclose who they were, but they wound up telling me, well, the reason why those parties didn't get back to Jose Benavidez Sr. is after a meeting fell through in late 2024 after the first Beterbiev-Bivol fight that Beterbiev won. They tried to put a deal together to get David the light heavyweight title fight, but were instructed by David that his father who couldn't apparently, this is what they're saying, couldn't get David Benavidez on the phone that Sunday. And they say it was because Jose was saying David was on a flight. He couldn't talk right now. Jose wound up telling me, it's because he's got church Sunday or whatever. He couldn't get David on the phone. And
just to be clear,
yeah,
you're saying that Jose was talking to these unnamed people that represent.
He was talking to Turki Al-Sheikh. He was flown into Las Vegas to have a meeting with Turki. Okay. Now,
so Jose's in person with Turki,
yes,
trying to negotiate a fight for David and Opetaia?
No, this is in late 24, Beterbiev and Bivol, okay?
Okay, yeah.
All right. And they're trying to put that fight together. Now, the people I'm talking on the phone with, not Jose, are saying the reason why it couldn't happen, Jose was originally wanting Turki to cut PBC out. We're not that happy with them. We want to do this fight without them, and let's put on the fight. Jose says, no, it's the opposite. I told them PBC has to be a part of the fight or we'll get sued. And he said Harrison Whitman was there, one of the attorneys who's now working with Zuffa, and Turki went to Harrison. He goes, is that true? Will they get sued if they try to do this fight without PBC? And he said, yeah. And that's when Jose says the opportunity to fight for the light heavyweight title was rescinded. Because Jose said if we even tried to pull a move like that, we'd end up in court. Like you see Oscar and Virgil Ortiz and everything. So there's contention there on how that went through. But what was said by the other side, not by Jose Benavidez, was David, when they finally do get a hold of him, he tells them, my father is not the guy who does my business. It's Louis DeCubas who represents Al Heyman, okay? Now, Jose says whatever David said, I am his manager on the books. So even Louis DeCubas, he has to finalize a fight with me for it to happen for his son, for David Benavidez. Anyways, should I stop there so you can and then continue on?
I mean, it stands to reason. If you're Jose and you're in the room with Turkey, you've got Harrison, you're trying to make a deal. If you are, in fact, the one to speak for your son, if you are, in fact, representing David and he's aware of it and backing you there, you ought to be able to get him on the phone, right? Like, you would expect that if David's not there with you, that he certainly knows you're there and is going to be reachable if the conversation needs to be had. The fact that you can't get him on the phone and you got to leave the meeting without having him a part of the conversation because you can't reach him, it probably gave them even more confidence that before David said what he said, that this guy probably isn't the one to be making this negotiation, right? That right there is already setting up some red flags, and shows the other side, as we're calling it, cracks in your armor, and you know what I mean. That's the kind of poker game. That's the kind of thing at the table that is going to make people try to play you out. They're like, okay, they're not all together over there. That might change the objective. In like Jose might have blown the fight trying to pull that stunt.
So they say that's why Jose has been left on red or delivered when he's talking to Dana White, when he's talking to Turki Al-Sheikh, when he's talking to Mick Francis. As we've been told by David, that's not who we speak to make his fight happen. So Jose says he did finally get a call Friday night from Mick Francis once the WBC made their decision to mandate David for Noel Mikaelian's title. So the other side, I kind of stopped them there and I go, okay, so if DeCubas, because part of why I'm doing this is I'm seeing David being called a duck and all that, and I'm trying to bring the other perspective to it because Ring is owned by Turkey and Lance Pugmire is a pro's pro, but he does have good sources in Zuffa. So they could have an interest in making it look good for Opetaia, bad for Benavidez, right? Even I love Lance. He's a better reporter than me for more longer tenured. So I go, okay, so to that point then, if Jose's not the guy to contact, did Team Opetaia contact Louis DeCubas then to make an Opetaia fight? Did they try to make an Opetaia fight with the guy that you're saying and David said is the guy to speak to? And I didn't get a yes. Actually, what I got was more of a, well, you saw the picture of Noel Mikaelian and Jai Opetaia after the inaugural Zuffa show, have their face-off. So that fight has long been in the works, Noel Mikaelian and Jai Opetaia, for months now, and was reported as being nearly done a couple weeks ago. So it's not like there's ever been a chance for Benavidez to duck Jai Opetaia. He has said his whole intention is to go back to light heavyweight. He's not interested in fighting for a Zuffa belt. So I understand people bringing that up, but at the same time, no negotiation, no offer has actually been extended to Team Benavidez to make an Opetaia fight. And actually, Opetaia's had a fight already lined up for months before he even defended the title against Brandon Glanton. So once they get wind that Mikaelian might be stripped of his title, that's when Opetaia's team gives Jose a call, right? And apparently they had a 12-minute conversation, and Mick Francis tries to start hashing out a timeline to make a Benavidez fight, and Jose Sr.'s, from what they told me, is kind of non-committal to that discussion, right? Jose's kind of like, no, now you want to call me to make a fight when I tried to text you weeks ago to get something going on, right? So now so what I'm hearing now is Mikaelian's going to have a decision to make. Does he want to fight Benavidez and defend his title for less money? Or because it's a Turkey-subsidized ring fight, make a lot more money than Turkey's going to pay you and fight for the ring title, the lineal title, against Jai Opetaia?
Okay, so Mikaelian's getting stripped if he takes the Opetaia fight with Zuffa.
Yes.
And that would leave it open for Benavidez potentially to fight for that vacant title. Someone else.
Yeah.
That's okay. Well, who cares about the Mikaelian fight if he gets stripped first?
Yeah.
Why does Opetaia want to fight Noel Mikaelian for no belt?
Well, he's already been stripped of his IBF, and it sucks for Opetaia, who wants to be undisputed, but the belts are being taken off the table. Look, the Zuffa drew their line in the sand that they said they don't want to work with the sanctioning bodies, but on the other side of their mouth, they've been open to doing it. Now, part of me thinks this is unwise of the WBC, just like it was kind of unwise of the IBF to strip the fighter. And I get there. And also, the WBC never really mandates a fighter that's holding other sanctioning bodies' belts to become a mandatory for their belt. They never do that. So it is a little bit dubious to mandate Benavidez when he's not in your rankings. He's the champion of 2 other sanctioning bodies. I'm just being fair here. But at the same time, Zuffa stated from the beginning that they don't want to work with any of the sanctioning bodies. So when the sanctioning bodies clap back, I understand both sides. It's bullshit to strip a fighter. It's bullshit to kind of bend your rules to make Benavidez a mandatory when he wasn't even in the rankings. He was fighting for the other 2 sanctioning body belts. You never do that in other scenarios. You didn't strip Canelo when Benavidez was his interim champion. Now you're going to strip this guy. I understand all the bullshit politics all around the board, but go ahead, Raheem.
Yeah, now I understand. I didn't understand before. This is the worst. This now is exactly what Zuffa supposedly was supposed to be remedying, right? They're just another, right now, they don't even have a UBO, right? So they're really literally just another promoter. And they are putting Opetaia in a position to be stripped of his IBF and now to fight a WBC champion without acquiring the belt. Because WBC isn't going to allow the WBC belt to be played into the Zuffa narrative because WBC wants to control their own narrative. And that has, like you say, makes no sense other than it's a pissing contest between the sanctioning body and the promoter who have drawn a line in the sand for war with each other. And they're using the actual fighters as their pawns. That is the worst.
Well,
both sides.
But part of me thinks this is exactly what Zuffa would want, because now you have the legit lineal champion fighting with no belts, but he's still fighting for Turkey's belt. And it props up the ring as the only meaningful belt in that scenario, and it props up the Zuffa belt alongside the only meaningful belt. This is how they would play it, right? And I do wonder, the WBC, instead of drawing this hard line, would the optics be better for you making Dana and Zuffa eat their words and double back and saying, oh, well, turns out you are going to use our belt, aren't you? But instead they're doing this Cold War, this war, whatever. And I don't know if that's playing checkers instead of chess. I don't know if the optics of it would look better. You want to put the ball in their court to say, Jai, actually, this is part of what we're doing here. We don't want you to fight for those sanctioning body belts. Instead of you taking the belt off the table, make them the bad guy. Make them have to take the belt off the table. Don't eliminate yourself out of the game. This is chess. It ain't checkers. I don't know.
Yeah, they're calling each other's bluff, right? Because the question then becomes, and my immediate reaction, while only my reaction, might be indicative of how the world looks at it. If you fight Mikaelian with the WBC title and add that to your legacy that you won the WBC title, which should have been a unification bout, obviously, that matters. If you fight Mikaelian stripped of the WBC title, same guy, I understand rationally you're dealing with the same fighter, I care a lot less. I want to see if you can win the title. I'm not so sure that I'm so invested in whether or not you can beat Mikaelian, and I hear myself when I say that.
No,
I understand the rational contradiction. But it is what it is, which is legacy. There is something in winning that belt. There is something in saying unified champion. There would be something in saying eventually undisputed. It actually does matter to me. Now, other people out there might be like, well, that makes absolutely no sense.
Matters to Jai Opetaia.
Clearly, right? But does it? But can Zuffa ultimately make it not matter to the fans? Or can they make it like, well, he beat those guys. He's just got the Zuffa belt, which represents him beating those other guys sanctioning body representatives. So it's all the same. To me, as rational a sentence as that might be, emotionally, it's a lot tougher sell. I don't know. That's because I've been in the game too long, or I've got too much reverence and nostalgia for the champions of past. But literally, you take that title off that guy, and I don't really care about that fight. And to be fair, if we're honest, I think, and this is me really speculating, but just being in the game the way I have, I think Mikaelian fights harder to keep that belt than he does to win that fight without that belt. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, it means, like, what hangs in the balance for the fighter means something. It makes you believe that the fight itself rises to another level of importance for each fighter. That's what you call the jeopardy of the fight, or the gravity of it's a championship fight or it's not. And Zuffa is not at a place where the Zuffa belt is a championship fight. It's just not. The Ring magazine, yes, means something, but not the same. It's not the same. And until and unless they can convince you that it is, this is a great test. This is a great test. Let's see how much interest is in that Mikaelian fight if that WBC title's not on the line. Because for me, it's not as interesting.
Yeah, because there's something to having that red and that green strap over Opetaia if he wins that fight. You know, it's something to it.
Yeah.
There is.
Something to knowing that the fighters know that that's what, like, losing your title is different from losing a fight. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
I wouldn't, I don't know. I expect more from the fighter when they're champions, which is why they get paid more to be champions.
So just like I think both sides are to blame. You know, the Zuffa side and the sanctioning bodies are to blame for how these scenarios are playing out. I also don't think that Benavidez is ducking Opetaia or Opetaia is ducking Benavidez. I understand Jose Benavidez has said, why not do that fight in 2 years? Jai Opetaia's he's fighting in front of 800 people in America. We want bigger fights. We want Bivol. We want Benavidez. We want to fight the established, bigger, longer tenured champions. Fights we've been going after at light heavyweight for a minute and all that. So I understand people saying, well, that's him putting off the Opetaia fight. But Jose also said, I have the best fighter in the world. David will beat Jai Opetaia. So why would I be trying to hide my fighter from Opetaia? And the side I talked to, they actually agree that they don't think Benavidez is really some underdog to Opetaia or afraid of Opetaia. And again, no actual negotiation has been extended one way or the other from either team. Okay, it's all just talk from the fans right now.
But let me ask you this: if Benavidez were to fight Opetaia, is that a title fight? Does he?
That's a good question. And look, as much as the business stuff is annoying to talk about, it's like Benavidez isn't the lineal champion at cruiserweight, but he is the bigger draw. He is the bigger name. So are you going to fight under his umbrella? Is David going to have to go over there and fight under that umbrella? We'll get to that in a minute, but let me continue on with the intel here. So moving on to the Beterbiev-Bivol rematch. After that, Benavidez again is being floated out from the Turkey side as we'll get you the light heavyweight title fight, and we'll still try to get you Canelo. Canelo Crawford has not happened yet, that kind of thing. But then by that point it does happen, and eventually they do make Canelo Crawford. So that's taken off the table, but they still believe they can make Benavidez get a shot at the light heavyweight title. And that's why he winds up fighting on the Riyadh season card after the Beterbiev-Bivol rematch. And Beterbiev is originally slated last November to be on that card. But what winds up happening is Beterbiev, who still has a piece of him from Top Rank sends a cease and desist letter to Turki Al-Sheikh. And that removes Beterbiev from the card. And Beterbiev was placed on that card to fight Benavidez since Bivol was still recovering from a back surgery. That was supposed to be a fight that happens this year in 2026. But once Beterbiev is removed from the card because of Top Rank cease and desist letter, that throws that out of whack. And then the Russian the Russian Boxing Federation or the IBAA or Umar Kremlev and people in associated in Russia, they wind up saying, no, Artur, Dmitry, we want you to have your trilogy staged in Russia, and we'll give you both around $20 million guaranteed, and this will not be subsidized by the Saudis. This will be a Russian fight. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, the reason Top Rank snatches Beterbiev.
And you'll remember, Lomachenko just came out of retirement, reportedly, the day his deal with Top Rank went up. Okay.
The reason Top Rank snatches Beterbiev off the card is because they already know that this fight in Russia can happen for the third fight with Bivol and Beterbiev. And what Turkey is doing with putting the Benavidez fight in front of Beterbiev is essentially potentially ruining that third fight with Bivol. Like that, if Benavidez beats up or wins against Beterbiev, which is very possible, that throws that trilogy out of whack completely. And since the Russians aren't going to let Turkey put on the third fight, which I think he would do, he's trying to put poop in their soup and trying to disrupt that marketability of that fight and their ability to put it on. While Bivol's not available, he's trying to bait Beterbiev into something that gets him into a different narrative and takes it away from the Russians. That's what's happening.
And I'll remind people, for people saying, well, Benavidez is doing this clout chasing with Bivol and, this pattern with Benavidez not fighting the best fighter in any given division. It was Turki Al-Sheikh last summer, reported by The Ring, who was quoted as shooting down Bivol and Benavidez for last year and told Bivol if he knows what's good for him, if he knows the right people that have been good to him, he'll continue on with this trilogy with Beterbiev. So maybe not exactly the line about Beterbiev, but basically he's the one who said, I'm no longer interested in funding this fight, which was Bivol and Benavidez in 2025, in the summer of 2025, when Bivol would go on to get stripped. So, Turkey, in his own outlet, The Ring, shot down Bivol and Benavidez last year. Anyways, to keep things moving, so from Jose Benavidez's standpoint, he knows about what's going on with Beterbiev and Bivol, that may very well likely be next. He's told us in the press he's not that keen on Opetaia right now. And then he's also reached out their way. He didn't get a response back. So he's like, I got to keep collecting belts. I got to keep making moves. He petitions in Mexico, the WBC, to mandate David. They give him what he wants. And he tells me, I know the fight's not that good. He's like, even if it is against Noel Mikaelian, I know that's not really the fight people want to see. We want to fight Bivol, Beterbiev, or Opetaia. And he said, and the Bivol fight could be done in 5 minutes. All Bivol has to do is want to make the fight, and not instead of fighting Beterbiev a third time. He's like, but he's not going to do that. He's going to fight Beterbiev a third time. The other people I'm talking to are saying, yep, 20 million apiece in Russia. That's likely next. I mean, nothing's for certain, but that's the play. So from Jose's perspective, this is just his side of things. That's why I'm mandating David for the WBC. And I didn't like David talking about a catchweight with Bivol, by the way. If you want to fight for the light heavyweight title against the light heavyweight champion, get back down to 175 like you originally said you could. And David did wind up saying later in that same interview with me and Sean Porter, I can make 175. Like, I got to get started on it right now. And by the end of the year, late in the year, I can get down to 75 and fight for the light heavyweight title. But he couldn't help but float out a catchweight idea. No, if you want to fight for the light heavyweight title, you have to fight as a light heavyweight, not a cruiserweight. So I understand and agree with that. Didn't like it.
Yeah, and you can't make the older, more accomplished fucking Hall of Fame fighter come up and meet you because you're deciding to run through the weight classes. Absolutely not.
Right.
And that's another example of where the title on being on the line matters. Am I as interested in a catchweight fight with no title on the line? Do I want to see that?
He's saying, we could do the light heavyweight and the cruiserweight titles, and it goes. You're trying to pull a Sugar Ray Leonard, Donnie Lalonde, but you're not Sugar Ray Leonard, David, and I like you, but you're not Sugar Ray Leonard, and everybody hated that when they did that in the late '80s, anyways.
Because if that's not both, that's neither.
Yeah.
Who do you think you're talking to?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like almond milk.
So
it's not almonds and it's not milk.
So from Jose's perspective, again, if there's no Opetaia fight actually on the table, and Beterbiev and Bivol, they cancel each other out as options 1 and 2, you move forward trying to grab more hardware, whether it's against Mikaelian or against the vacant WBC strap to add to the 2 cruiserweight titles you got. And so now here's just where I pontificate. And by the way, Samson Lukowicz, publicist on Twitter, very angry with me, saying I had a sociopathic mindset to David potentially leaving Samson. Look, it went under the radar. Nobody really talked about it, but Benavidez reiterated a couple times he only has 1 fight left with his current promoter right now, okay? And I don't think a fighter says that a few times if he's already got his mind made up, okay? And Samson Lukowicz, before DeCubis, before Heyman, before anybody, discovered David Benavidez. He discovered Manny Pacquiao in the Americas before when he first got here. He is a great finder of talent, okay? But we said all along when Opetaia first signed with Zuffa, people could check the video, Opetaia to Zuffa, that the whole play here for Zuffa, and which is funded by Turkey, might be to use Opetaia as a chip to get David Benavidez. And the people I talked to said David Benavidez and Dana White have a relationship. They talk. Dana White took a picture with a young, chubby David Benavidez a long time ago when David was a kid. So they have a rapport from what they told me. That's just what they told me, right? And I'm thinking, and remember, this all goes back to Jose says the fight got taken off the table for the light heavyweight title the minute he said PBC had to be involved. Now, they obviously were involved with the Anthony Yard fight, but then they come back to stateside and are being the only American promoter without a Riyadh season banner for the Zurdo Ramirez fight. That was just Golden Boy PBC, which isn't really a thing these days in the United States. Everybody has some funding by Turkey Al-Sheikh. So if you're the Turkey side and the Zuffa side, wouldn't you rather give them Bivol or Beterbiev or specifically Opetaia with you promoting him, with you getting him as a fighter? And sure, if he wants to still pay Al Heyman as an advisor and Louis DeCubis, if Louis DeCubis wants to be like Keith Connolly and take his talent to Zuffa, fine, whatever. Like, that comes out of David's end. But we want to be his promoter at Zuffa, which is funded by Turkey and all. That's my speculation, right? Is that would be the play they want to get, is once David's a free agent at the end of the year, David has 1 fight left. That's when they try to really sell him on fight Opetaia, become the man, get the opportunity to beat the best fighter in the division, which you were denied of at light heavyweight, which you were denied of at super middleweight, and come here and take the fight. And look, he said I suggested that. I'm not saying, David, go do that. David's going to do what David's going to do regardless of what I say. But I will, and people know how critical I've been of TKO and Zuffa, but you don't want to get frozen out either. Terrence Crawford didn't. The shoe's on the other foot. He's kind of like Terrence Crawford on the other when he couldn't fight the PBC fighters. He wanted to fight Sean Porter. He wanted to fight Errol Spence. He wanted to fight Keith Thurman. He couldn't really get them, and then ultimately to get the Errol Spence fight, he had to cross the street, even though it was bullshit, even though he shouldn't have had it. Maybe that's what David's going to have to do to fight the Opetaias or the winner of a Bivol Beterbiev.
Well, I mean, what did Crawford say when he left Top Rank? His quote
said they couldn't secure me the fights that I wanted. So if Samson
he specifically Spence, he's like, I signed here to fight Spence. You told me, you promised me I'm getting that fight if I'm with Top Rank, and you didn't deliver. You couldn't get me to fight. It's not now what Zuffa or Turkey has to do. It's what Samson has to do. You got to now prove that you can get David Benavidez a fight that he wants without them. If you're the promoter and that's your guy, you have to now prove, if you got 1 fight left, well, this is your card to play. You can't be like, well, Zuffa said this, Turkey said that, Dana said this, blah, 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 blah. That means that you've already been frozen out leverage-wise. And I hate to hear it. I want everybody to have their, rightful place in a guy's career and be able, you got to be able to deliver. If even Bob Arum couldn't deliver, Bob Arum has to go. If you can't, this is really not David's moment. It's not Turkey's moment. It's not Dana's moment. It's not Zuffa's moment. It's not Ring's moment. It's Sampson's moment. What can he get done with one fight left in the deal that brings your fighter back to the table to sign a new deal?
And I don't think you're going to be able to outbid the Russians for how much they may be putting forth for Bivol and Beterbiev to bring Bivol stateside as a B-side, as the champion in the United States. Good luck doing that. It's not going to be easy. I would love to cover it, but, I don't see that happening. And then Opetaia locked into Zuffa. If you don't want to let David fight, however, find a way to make it work. I don't know. It could be an Amazon, Paramount. I don't know. That doesn't even sound realistic. So if you can't deliver the fights, and if David really truly wants to fight those fights, he may be put between a rock and a hard place because, unfortunately, he's not Canelo when it comes to drawing power. He can't just snap his fingers and draw the kind of revenue that can offset the $20 million in Russia for Bivol or the Turkey money that's funding Zuffa. He can't make that happen. And also, yes, Sampson discovered him as a 17-year-old that nobody was checking for, but you don't own fighters in perpetuity forever unless they sign a deal like that. It doesn't work that way. The fighter ultimately, you could talk about loyalty a lot, and Jose certainly did. Jose loves Sampson, is devoutly loyal to Sampson, Al Heyman, and DeCubas. But ultimately,
Jose's not the fighter either.
Huh?
Jose isn't the fighter either.
He is not. David ultimately will have to do what's best for David. And if David thinks that is staying with the people that brought him to the dance indefinitely, then that's him. That's his choice. And I understand that. But if it's also, look, Sampson, I love you. I'm grateful for everything. And I'm sure you've made a good ROI. I'm sure you've already made a good return on investment. But if I have to go over here or I have to do this or do that to land the fights that will prove I am the best, then he may have to do that too. We will see what happens. It's not.
Or David can find a way to bring Sampson in on the deal.
Sure.
If no leverage, no decision making power, but you get some money. You get, every time I fight over here, you get a little cutters. It's real. Like I say, it's in Sampson's court. You got to either get your fighter to make that play for you, or you got to make a play for your fighter where you can deliver something that doesn't seem to be possible, but make it happen. That's supposed to be the magic of you. I mean, we asked the fighters to do so much in the ring, to pull it out, to get these championship rounds, get up off the canvas and win. Fight this guy who you might lose to and be better than him. Take this training camp. And all the fighters got to do all of that to make this money. Well, now you're up against it. Well, now you're down on the cards. Now the opposition seems to be better than you. Fight the fight and win the fight. You ask the fighter to win every fight. This is your fight now. As a promoter, you got to win it. You got to find a way to win it.
I ask you this, Raheem, right? And now this is just us talking. I feel like a lot of the narrative right now is that, because David has been with the PBC, this is Gervonta Davis, who was never really interested in fighting Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, a few others maybe. This is Errol Spence, happy to just let Al Heyman have his ear and put off the Crawford fight until it did happen, right? I feel Benavidez is a little bit more into the history of boxing than those fighters are. I feel like he has a little bit different temperament than him. He is a little bit more from the heart about the game. Now, all fighters fight to get paid, and Al Heyman does have David Benavidez's ear. But I feel like it's a little bit different dynamic, and I feel it's actually a little bit more like Terrence Crawford was, where I know I can beat these other welterweights. I know I could beat these other fighters. I'm just not getting the opportunity to do it. And when that was happening to Terrence, a lot of the media sided with him as that being the case. That is not the case right now. It's more they think Benavidez is kind of full of shit and is looking good against who he's fighting, but he isn't really that guy because he's not fighting that guy at 168, at 175, and now at 200 pounds. I'm not saying it's an exact one-to-one comparison, but I feel like, just me, and you tell me if you disagree, he is more the Terrence Crawford in this situation than he is the Gervonta Davis.
In his approach, yes. I don't think David Benavidez is consciously saying, hey, I can get paydays without fighting the main guy or without challenging myself, so I might as well do that and just make as much money as I can with the least resistance. I don't think that's David's disposition at all. However, for him to get the credit for winning those fights, you have to win those fights.
Yep.
That's why Opetaia is not undisputed, no matter who has the other belts, because you haven't beaten those champions. And let me tell you what, if you beat the guys who once held those belts but are stripped or are beaten by somebody else by the time you beat them, you still won't be undisputed. That is the thing. You have to actually win those fights, because in boxing, while we can all sit around and talk about what we think will happen and lean on our experience and our punditry and our thought about how great we are at predicting, we don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what upsets are made of. And that's where stars are born, from unlikely circumstances. And that's how boxing and all sports really happen. Like, unless you've done it, you didn't do it, no matter how much we think you might have been able to. And that's why we'll never know if Benavidez beats Canelo, no matter what you thought when you thought it. That's why we'll never know what would have happened with Pacquiao and Mayweather, no matter what you think, if it had happened 5 or 6 years before. We don't know what would have happened with Crawford and Spence, no matter what you think would ultimately happen if that fight had been happening pre-car crash, maybe even at a different weight. Like, what didn't happen. And if you're not going to be able to fight the best in the division or win the titles while the champion holds the title, you'll never be able to take credit for those victories or put that legacy on your resume. Mm-hmm. It just didn't happen. And I think David is acutely aware of that. And is probably very disillusioned in a way about how difficult it has been to navigate the politics of boxing and to get the fighters in the ring that he wants to fight when he wants to fight, because he wants to prove in the ring that he's able to do it for real. That's what the promoter is for. That is what you have to have some kind of leverage on your side to force to happen. You've either got to make so much money, got to be such a big draw that the promoters are willing to work it out so they can get a piece of that money, or you got to have the promoter that has all the cards or all the fighters in their stable and prioritizes your agenda over another fighter's agenda. But unfortunately, in a lot of walks of life, including boxing, just being the best or knowing that you are and believing it wholeheartedly isn't enough. You got to not only deliver, but you first got to get in a position to deliver. That's the bottom line.
Well, what we're headed for, unless things change, is Noel Mikaelian, Jose Opetaia on a ring show for the cruiserweight lineal title, and Benavidez fighting for 3 belts for a vacant WBC title, alongside the WBA, WBO cruiserweight titles, and Beterbiev-Bivol concluding their trilogy in Russia. That's where it all sounds to me what we're headed for. Although, nothing is probably completely set in stone. So we'll see if some wins can change. But yeah, if that's how it goes, 2026 is going to be very interesting or 2027 will be very interesting to see where a free agent David Benavidez, what decision he has to make and does make.
Yeah, actually, what you just put together, other than the fighting for, I don't know. I'm not super mad about that. However, the Mikaelian being stripped and then fighting Opetaia leaves a real bad taste. Like, that sucks. That sucks. That sucks, bro. Like, I would be okay with what you just put down if Mikaelian retains that WBC title and fights for or defends it against Opetaia. Then we're fine. Then, okay, that's the next episode across that landscape we're discussing. And it'll be very interesting to see who comes out of those fights and what the landscape looks like then, with Benavidez being a free agent, with Opetaia or Mikaelian maybe retaining his title, or Opetaia now having that title, and where the IBF, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, then let's see what happens. But on the gamesmanship level of these promoters, and that's all Zuffa is just another promoter. They are talking about all this other stuff, but right now they're operating under the exact same system that every other promoter is. And the Zuffa belt has no legacy, no history, no reverence by any real fans.
Is
no
it yet
nothing
technically legal
to speak of. It's not even. It's a trophy. Even, you know. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not even a belt. So let's cut it out. Once you pass your legislation and create something else and become something else, let's deal with that then. But maybe just function as a promoter like the rest of the promoters, because you're certainly making shit as complicated as the rest of the promoters are. You're certainly making the sanctioning body merry-go-round menagerie of complicated, absolute puzzle. You've added more pieces to this jigsaw puzzle of sanctioning bodies and who's going to be fighting who for what. You've certainly done all that. So, yeah, you're just another promoter creating what feels like a 6-belt era now. Let's take a step back from the pissing contest, and maybe, while everything is the same before UBO becomes reality, just function like we want the best fights for the best fighters across the board. Let people defend their titles. Let people retain their titles. Let people become undisputed. Let people become unified. Let boxing thrive. Make it about the fighters and the competition and the entertainment you're putting in front of the fans, instead of your company, your promotion, your press conference, your pissing contest. Maybe, just if we just have that for a little while longer, let's enjoy it.